Hello and welcome. I'm Ricky with Watch Mojo, and today we're doing a deep dive into the most challenging moments from the God of War games. God of War is the terrific hack-and-slash adventure series from PlayStation featuring Kratos that has earned tons of awards and praise since its debut in 2005. Up first, we're looking at the hardest items and achievements to get from across the God of War franchise.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're looking at items and equipment from the God of War series takes the most effort to unlock.
Do not be sorry. Be better.
Daedalus's Schematics, God of War 3. We'll start off with one that isn't too big a hassle, but can be easy to miss. In general, finding the godly possessions in God of War 3 isn't all that challenging. Most of them, Kratos can grab either right before or right after each character dies. However, Daedalus's Schematics are a little trickier than the rest. Naturally, they're located in his workshop, but the room has multiple portals in it. You have to pull a lever to raise the ballista up, then run up a wall into the portal facing downwards. This leads to another lever, which lowers a platform with two chests. Back by the ballista, firing it into the portal directly ahead will drop the chests, one of which holds your prize. Ivaldi's Deadly Mist set, God of War. Niflheim can be a fairly intimidating realm when you first encounter it. Covered in a deadly fog, Kratos and Atreus will be given a time limit for how long they can stay there, and if the bar depletes, they'll quickly die. However, only by continuing your exploration will you get armor that can help you. There are several resources that can only be found here, hidden in chests and guarded by enemies. By taking these resources to Sindri, he can craft you Ivaldi's Deadly Mist armor set, which not only gives you resistance to Niflheim's mist, but gives Kratos minor health regeneration. However, if you happen to die in Niflheim before reaching Sindri, you'll lose those resources. Dark Odyssey costume, God of War 2.
Let him open the door! The battle is ours!
God mode is the hardest difficulty in multiple God of War games, but in God of War 2, it's the second hardest. We'll talk about what you get from Titan mode, the hardest this sequel offers, in a bit, but God mode is still nothing to sneeze at. The enemies are still going to hit you much harder, and your useful orbs are going to be in shorter supply. By completing this game on this difficulty, you'll get the Dark Odyssey costume. It cuts your defense in half, making any replay just a bit more dangerous. But it also doubles your attack power and makes it so red orbs go a lot further in upgrading your weapons. The Gravedigger's Shovel, God of War, Ghost of Sparta.
Feel the power of Olympus! Insolent! Die, mortal!
Ghost of Sparta played things a bit differently with how players unlocked content. It included a new area called the Temple of Zeus where Kratos could spend red orbs, collected either in the campaign or through challenge modes. The highest costing reward was the Robotos costume at 250,000 orbs. But in total, you'd have to spend 1,000,000 red orbs to unlock everything, and therefore gain the temple's hidden prize. While you get these orbs just by playing, that's still a lot of work. But by doing so, you'll be led to a secret area with the Gravedigger's Shovel, which unlocks the ability to play as Zeus in the game's combat challenges. God Armor, God of War 2. Kratos may start the game wearing this armor, but you have to work extra hard to get it back. After beating the game, you'll unlock the Challenge of the Titans, 7 combat encounters that can be a major pain. Some of them task you with defeating enemies a specific way and within a time limit, which can be nerve-wracking. However, there's also one where you must defeat all enemies before Kratos runs out of health, which is constantly draining. And another where you must defeat all the enemies without getting hit at all. Plus, you don't get the god armor just by beating these challenges. You have to gain enough points to earn a god ranking. It doubles all of Kratos' stats though, making it a very tantalizing prize. Steinbjorn Armor Set, God of War Ragnarok. Anytime after completing Chapter 10 in God of War Ragnarok, Kratos can find a hidden relic on the frozen Lake of Nine called the Mystical Heirloom. At first, it seems like this item does nothing, but while it's equipped, you can use it to access 4 mini-boss fights against various trolls. One is at the Derelict Outpost in Midgard, another is at the Forbidden Sands in Alfheim, and the 2 at Noatun's Garden in Vanaheim are obviously the hardest. But after going through the process of tracking these trolls down and defeating them, the Steinbjorn armor set makes a mighty fine prize.
You're on fire, Kratos! They won't pass!
The Waist Guard and Gauntlets give a moderate luck chance to stagger and stun enemies when Kratos takes damage, while the chest piece lets him regain health with each hit after taking enough damage. The Blazing Magma Armor Set. Muspelheim is the fiery counterpart to Niflheim, and while it doesn't feature mist that can slowly try to kill you, it's still the harder of the two. Made up of combat challenges, you'll be able to craft and buy the Magma Armor Set from materials you only find here. Doing so only takes a few fights, but if you want to take full advantage of what it can offer, you'll need to put in quite a bit of effort. Upgrading the armor set requires going through many increasingly tougher trials, including a fight against Grendel, who, while not on the level of Sigrun, is one of the hardest Valkyries in the game. General Kratos, God of War 2. In God of War 2, Kratos can actually collect the eyes that he rips from the sockets of Cyclops enemies in their death animation. And if players want the General Kratos costume, they'll need to yank out 20 of them. This may seem tricky at first, given there aren't 20 individual Cyclops encounters in a single playthrough. There are other ways though, like farming them in the Challenge of the Titans or fighting them in the Arena of the Fates, which adds to your total. 20 is still a fairly large number of them though, and they're pretty formidable enemies. The costume increases the potency of red orbs by quite a lot while decreasing that of green, blue, and gold ones, as well as reducing Kratos' attack and defense. Hilt of Forsprender, God of War Ragnarok. In 2018's God of War, killing all of Odin's ravens only got you XP, but in Ragnarok, they get you something pretty neat. After hunting down all 48 of them across the realms, which, trust us, is no small feat, you'll unlock a secret boss fight against the Raven Keeper. She's essentially a souped-up revenant, but that's still one of the most annoying enemies of the franchise's Norse era. She'll frequently teleport around the arena and bring in minions to whittle away your health, but at a quarter health, she'll summon a freaking dragon.
Here it comes!
After taking them both down, you'll earn the rare Hilt of Forcebrander. It can push enemies back and grant Kratos an aura of protection, making it very useful if he's getting swarmed.
Perished at last. Finally now, our anguish may pass.
The Spartan Armor Set. God of War Ragnarok Valhalla.
I see half woman, half bird abomination. Not limited to my homeland.
Sony surprised everyone with an unveiled free DLC for God of War Ragnarok at the 2023 Game Awards. And it is, without a doubt, one of the most difficult areas in the game. Bringing new story elements as well as roguelike mechanics, it's hard to say how difficult a time you'll have when so many things are randomized. However, you'll have no companion, and you'll only unlock cosmetic armor as you go. Kratos enters with only his weapons and gains perks as he goes. Additionally, considering there are a ton of bosses inside, you'll definitely be tested. While there are additional challenges, beating it once gains you the Spartan armor set, and the ability to make Kratos look like his Greek-era self. Surtur's Scorched Set, God of War Ragnarok. Ragnarok brought back the combat challenges of Muspelheim, but unlocking the armor here is a bit more of a time commitment. You'll need to have already completed the 6 Crucible challenges, which unlocks the final challenges.
You've gotten all the unique rewards old Surtur had to offer.
Needless to say, these are much harder than those that precede them. You'll get a piece of Surtur's Scorched Armor set after finishing the 1st, 3rd, and 4th challenges. They're all pretty hard, so which ones you choose are down to your skills as a player. It's one of the best armor sets in the game, though. The gauntlets and girdle make Kratos take less damage and stagger when hit while performing an attack, and the cuirass lets him do extra damage while interrupting an enemy's attack. Mime of War, God of War, Chains of Olympus. There are a lot of unlockables in God of War that you can only get by beating an entry on the highest difficulty. For Chains of Olympus, you get the Mime of War costume. It isn't as simple as just starting the game on God mode, as it's called. The difficulty level is only unlocked after beating the game once. Not only do enemies naturally hit harder, but orbs are only worth half as much. The Mime of War is definitely a good reward. In contrast to God mode, wearing it multiplies the worth of red orbs by 4 and green and blue orbs by 2. That's on top of the silly appearance and invisible weapons. Armor of Zeus, God of War. The Armor of Zeus can only be gained on a New Game Plus playthrough. That wouldn't be so bad if not for the particular enemies that hold each piece. Of course, they're Valkyries, and of course, they're 3 of the strongest ones. To get the War Belt, you must defeat Hildur in Niflheim with its annoying Deadly Mist issue. The gauntlets are earned from Grendel and Muspelheim, who has extremely destructive fire attacks. Finally, the cuirass is held by Sigrun, the queen whose reputation for being a chore should precede her, and who's only fought after all the others are slain. The set comes with high stats as well as a major increase to damage, both in output and how much Kratos takes. It returned in Ragnarok, but was a bit easier to obtain. Ghost of Sparta, God of War, Ghost of Sparta. One of the things you can't obtain in Ghost of Sparta's Temple of Zeus is a costume named after the game itself. The Ghost of Sparta costume can only be earned by beating the game on God mode, which is the hardest difficulty here. Naturally, that means it's only for players with the skill and patience to pull it off, as bosses and enemies can absolutely shred you. You might find it not even worth the effort. The costume makes Kratos take twice as much damage as he normally would. The benefit is that Pharah's Bane deals 4 times the fire damage, and refills drastically quicker than with any other costume. Still though, that's only one attack.
The destroyer of worlds.
Mick Kratos, God of War, Chains of Olympus. It's a shame the newer God of War games don't have the silly costumes of the Greek era. In Chains of Olympus, the Mick Kratos costume made the Ghost of Sparta resemble a Scotsman, complete with bright red hair, a kilt, and gigantic axes in place of his blades of chaos. Wearing it drastically increases Kratos' damage output, while having the amount of blue and green orbs you can collect. The costume is unlocked by beating the Challenge of Hades, a series of 5 combat encounters. It isn't as arduous as some other optional challenges in the series, but a few of them are still a pain, especially one that has Kratos constantly losing health while enemies come at him. Rond of Obliteration, God of War Ragnarok, Valhalla. Players can earn this powerful shield Rond in Ragnarok, which charges a projectile-based attack while Kratos guards, by defeating the post-game boss, the new Valkyrie Queen Gna. However, it's actually a bit harder to get in Valhalla. You must reach the end of the DLC, conquering the most challenging fight against Tyr on the Show Me Mastery difficulty, which is the highest difficulty offered. But that's not all. You must also choose the penalty of breaching affliction at the beginning of your run, which makes you weaker and slowly drains health without outright killing you. Honestly, props to those of you who have done this, because I could not be bothered. Athena and Hercules costumes, God of War 2. God mode is called Titan mode in God of War 2, but no matter what it's called, the very hard difficulty remains an insurmountable challenge for many players. In addition to beating the game once to unlock it, Titan mode increases all enemy strength while decreasing yours. Green and blue orbs aren't quite as potent, while red orbs are much rarer. Beating Titan mode gets you 2 costumes for the price of 1, Hercules and Athena. The Hercules costume doubles your power while halving your defense, and the Athena costume increases the value of red, green, and blue orbs while also giving a decrease to defense. The Hilt of Skofnung, God of War Ragnarok. Technically speaking, Kratos gets this hilt upon starting the Fit for a King quest in Ragnarok, but actually being able to use it, that's the tricky part. Players must hunt down and defeat all 12 Berserkers, a couple of which don't fight alone. Not only are they naturally scattered throughout the realms, but they're on par with the Valkyries from the 2018 game, which is to say, they're gonna beat the crap out of you. The The final bout against King Hrolf is obviously the toughest. If you don't have your weapons and armor fully upgraded, he'll make you regret it. Thankfully, the hilt is worth it once you can actually use it. It summons a group of ghostly swords that make every enemy encounter a breeze.
Lightning headed your way!
Radiant Shield of Unity, and Aspis of Spartan Fury, God of War. Every God of War game is hard if you play on the highest difficulty. With less opportunities to heal than the original games, the Norse ones may just have the edge. But that's far from the only issue. For the 2018 installments Give Me God of War difficulty, enemies are not only stronger, quicker, and more durable, but their status effects also deal more damage and last longer. Beating the game this way will surely satisfy you, but it also comes with a couple of rewards. These are 2 shields for Kratos, the Radiant Shield of Unity and the Aspis of Spartan Fury. Sadly though, these are purely cosmetic skins for the shield he already has. Challenge of the Gods costumes. God of War 2005. The original God of War had multiple silly but rewarding costumes to unlock. However, it took beating a series of fights that are some of the hardest the series has ever seen. The Challenge of the Gods is unlocked after beating the game, and tasks you with completing 10 encounters. Many of them come with time limits, which only add stress to the already daunting criteria. Most of them throw groups of extremely powerful enemies at you, and the final one is a recipe for fury. Kratos must raise a platform by defeating satyrs and Cerberus pups, who endlessly spawn and take up quite a bit of room on the minuscule platform. If you have the patience, this unlocks Chef of War, Ares Armor, Bubbles, Tycoonius, and Dairy Bastard. What God of War unlockable gave you the most trouble?
You think I can't handle a little cursed mist? Well, you're right.
Told me he would kill you.
He can't.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're taking a look at the 10 most difficult trophies to pop across the God of War games.
Thank you, friends. You have saved the Valkyries.
Sigrun.
Chooser of the Slain, God of War 2018. This is the greatest challenge you'll face in the 2018 God of War, as you will have to face and defeat all 9 Valkyries in the game. But you want to know the funny part in all this? The first 8 are all fairly easy, as they only use a few attacks, some of them using the same attacks as another Valkyrie. Sigrun, the 9th Valkyrie, is the one that may make you sweat. Sigrun plays super aggressively and will rush you down, giving you very little time to breathe and process what's happening. Even on the easiest difficulty, she's no pushover, unless you look up a guide. Trials by Fire, God of War Ragnarok. While Ragnarok's trophies are just as straightforward as God of War 2018's, it does not mean there isn't one trophy that may give you some trouble. Trial by Fire is that trophy, as it requires you to complete the Trials of Muspelheim. Think of this as the new and expanded iteration of Challenge of the Gods, as you will have to tackle 24 challenges. Each of these will test your combat prowess, demanding that you simply defeat every enemy without getting hit, or survive a gauntlet of consecutive boss fights. This may make you sweat even a little bit. Bleeding Thumbs, God of War 2. Speaking of Challenge of the Gods, this post-game mode has long been infamous for imposing grueling tasks onto players. While God of War 2 eased up on these compared to its predecessor, that does not mean it's suddenly super easy. You will have to endure this mode once more for the Bleeding Thumbs trophy. Known here as Challenge of the Titans, you will go through 7 challenges instead of 10. The first 6 shouldn't give you too much trouble, but the 7th will be a pain in the ass. The 7th challenge is one of those perfection challenges. Defeat all enemies without getting hit once. We recommend you prioritize the skeletons and avoid hitting the Minotaur until all skellies are dead. The Minotaur won't attack unless you attack it. Amazed, God of War 3.
Power to create, the power to destroy. The King of the Gods has forsaken me.
God of War 3 has some pretty tough trophies of its own, as we'll see later on. One of the most annoying trophies is the Amazed trophy. For this, you will need to get through the entire labyrinth without falling off or dying. Easier said than done, honestly. This means surviving all of the fights and successfully jumping across all gaps and ledges to the correct areas. And there are even some instant death traps you will have to avoid mid-combat too. It might be in your best interest to not attempt this on Titan mode. Just saying. Lubed Up, God of War Ascension. Most of Ascension's trophies shouldn't pose too much of a threat to you, at least according to the percentage of players who have earned each trophy. However, the biggest hurdle you may face is Lubed Up. Remember the statue of Apollo and that abysmal sliding section? Yeah, you're going to have to suffer through that whole thing again without dying. Veteran God of War players may not have too much issue with this, but for average players, this might require a few attempts. Speed of Jason McDonald, God of War HD. The only way this trophy will give you trouble is if you're attempting this under a normal playthrough. Definitely do not go for this on your first run, or if you haven't played the game in ages. To pop the Speed of Jason McDonald trophy, you will have to beat God of War in less than 5 hours. The reason for this is because one person on the God of War team, sound and music scripter Jason McDonald, managed to beat the game faster than anybody else on the team did at just a little over 5 hours. McDonald has made a name for himself within the franchise, having served as a combat designer for God of War 2 and Ascension, as well as a lead designer for God of War 2018 and Ragnarok. So, popping this trophy means you have bested one of the few people who has been working on the franchise for their entire life. Up to the challenge, God of War 3. Yes, Challenge of the Gods returns to the list once more with God of War 3, this time under the name Challenge of Olympus. Overall, this one is the most fun and creative of all the post-game challenge modes. Problem is that the toughest challenge is the third one. Allow the Gorgons to turn you to stone and break free 10 times without dying. You can tell this either filtered players out or it wasn't even attempted by players, as according to PSN profiles, only 6% have managed to pop this trophy on PlayStation 3. As for the PS4 remaster, only a little more than 3% of players managed to conquer this mode. Allfather Blind, God of War 2018. If there was one aspect of God of War 2018 that we could not stand, it was Odin's damn birds. These feathered freaks were super annoying to find, as there was rarely ever a clue in finding them. We were required to find 51 of these guys, and your best way of finding them on your own was to play the entire game with headphones or with your TV at a high volume. even then, you're bound to miss several of these guys, and the game doesn't give you a shred of information as to which ones you've nabbed, where some of them might be hiding, not even a total you found in each region. You basically have to play the game with a guide if you want to eviscerate every single one. It may not be hard fighting them all, but it's obnoxious enough to call it hard. Hard to tolerate, that is. Unhuman, God of War 3. Your task is simple for this trophy. Beat the game on the hardest difficulty, Titan mode. That's it. That's all you have to do. Just in case you didn't hear us though, this is the absolute hardest difficulty in the game. That's not counting Chaos mode though, because there's no trophy for beating that, so who in their right mind would even attempt that? But anyways, under Titan mode, Kratos is horrendously debuffed as he deals way less damage than his enemies do and takes in more damage. In other words, you will have to be at the top of your game to make it out of this one alive. I'll take the physical challenge, God of War HD. There will never be a challenge of the gods as excruciatingly, as painfully difficult as the original God of War. If you are adamant about gunning for that legendary platinum trophy, you will have to beat all 10 sections of Challenge of the Gods, all of which can be comically easy or annoyingly frustrating. And no, you cannot save and back out and come back mid-progress. You have to do it all in one go. The worst part of this whole challenge, though, is that in the very last challenge, you must knock off baby Cerberuses from a platform in order to raise it to your goal. Not only that, you need to do so while 2 invincible satyrs attack you, and those satyrs do have an attack that can fling you over the edge. What the hell, Jaffe? What was going on in your head when developing this game? But what's the toughest trophy you've earned in a God of War game?
Needless to say, you are a true Spartan if you manage to get these items and achievements. Okay, up next are the hardest bosses from both God of War 2018 and God of War Ragnarok.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're showcasing the 10 hardest bosses in God of War 2018. With Ragnarok nearly here, it's time to revisit the deities and beasts that gave us the most trouble in the first Norse chapter. Other than Sigrun, which boss gave you the most grief? Helheim Bridgekeeper. By the time Kratos finds himself in Helheim, you've fought more than your fair share of trolls. We'd grown used to the attack patterns of the big brutes, but the one fought in the underworld has a few annoying tricks up its sleeve. For one, he can teleport, popping up next to Kratos to catch you off guard. He also has ranged attacks in the form of ice blasts, shockwaves, and energy spheres that will burst if you touch them. If that doesn't annoy you enough, he'll do one of our least favorite boss fight tropes and summon minions. While the physical attacks are easier to see coming, the Bridgekeeper has enough variety to keep you on your toes. Rota. The Valkyries have a well-earned reputation for providing pretty tough challenges. Some of the most detrimental attacks they have in their wheelhouses are their grapples, either dragging Kratos across the arena's floor or stomping their heel into his neck. Rota loves to use both, usually in quick succession or after other attacks, knocking off a lot of health in one go. This fight calls for constant movement and well-timed dodges. Otherwise, Kratos will soon be in the dirt. Of course, she's also got projectiles and uninterruptible combo attacks if her grapples aren't cutting it. As long as your reaction time is up to snuff, Kratos will be fine. But if not, you'll soon be cursing Rota's name. Grendel of the Ashes and Frost.
The rune! Did you see it?
Yes!
Are you certain?
I got it! Trust me!
What's worse than a fight against a troll? Well, a fight against two, obviously. Kratos and Atreus square off against these elementally infused behemoths inside Tyr's vault. And since they're guarding something incredibly important, they pack quite a punch. They don't bring quite the same level of annoyance as the Helheim troll, but again, there are two of them. And one may attack you from behind if you're too focused on the other. They can also each produce darkness to hinder your vision. While Grendel of the Ashes can burn Kratos, his frost counterpart can slow his movement. They don't have nearly as much health as the bridgekeeper, but they can certainly be a nuisance if you don't stay alert. Kreisleer. Anytime a dragon appears as a boss fight in a game, it's required the developers make it tough to match its stature. While Kreisleer isn't the hardest dragon we've fought in a game, it still deserves recognition. The first phase isn't too bad. He'll surprise Kratos and Atreus inside the mountain, swiping with his claws. Outside is when the real fight starts. The dragon will rain down lightning, covering the arena, as well as try to hit you with shockwaves or stomp you into the ground. Figuring out how to deal damage isn't hard, but being a great big stinking dragon, it also isn't that hard for it to deal damage to you, especially on higher difficulties. Here. Each of God of War's Valkyries brings something new and highly annoying to the table. In the case of Ymir, it's several things. She can use her wings to shield herself, and will counterattack you if you try to break through without using a runic attack or block break. She can also produce an AoE attack that blinds you, which she follows up with a wing stab. Worse is when she rises into the air to emit a massive blast that deals heavy damage, or outright kills you depending on the difficulty and how much health you have. Only shooting her or throwing the Leviathan axe will stop her. All of this is made more frustrating by her tiny arena. Baldur and Freya.
This again.
While the climactic battle with Baldur and Freya isn't the hardest in the game, or even hardest in the story, the duo definitely put up a fight. Baldur is naturally much more aggressive here than when you fight him at the beginning of the game. Compounding his aggression is the fact that he switches between ice and fire forms, making it so his attacks deal extra damage. He'll eventually start changing mid-sequence, forcing Kratos to constantly switch which weapons he's using. Freya's purpose is to make the arena harder for you to navigate by tying you up in vines and reanimating the corpse of a giant to slam the ground and produce shockwaves. Anything to give her son the upper hand. Magni and Modi. Growing up in Asgard, these brothers probably trained countless times with one another, and that has turned them into some formidable adversaries. While it is a 2v2 fight, if you're beating one of Thor's sons too badly, the other will turn his attention to you and hit you from behind. Modi will make great use of his shield, defending and bashing you in the middle of a combo. On the other hand, Magni, being the bigger of the two, hits a lot harder. They'll also periodically deploy fog, forcing you to be defensive. You'll have to time your block perfectly to stop them from lunging towards you. In addition to just being strong, they'll eventually begin using powerful electrical attacks, some of which can be really tough to avoid.
No!
Gondor. Enemies that specialize in fire-based attacks can be pretty irksome. While Gondel of Muspelheim has a bigger arena than most other Valkyries, that won't really be an advantage to you, as she'll spend the fight covering the ground in flames. Even if her 3 raining fireballs don't hit you, they'll leave a trail of fire that will burn Kratos if he touches it. Her most annoying quality is immediately following up a fireball with a boot stomp grapple. which made us rage every time she connected. Like Ear, she's also a fan of producing an AoE attack directly followed by a wing slice. It's no wonder her home looks like hell, because that's basically what she'll put you through if you're not careful. Svartaljofurr. Dark elves are quick, and that's especially the case for their king. Svartaljofurr is another boss that's best fought defensively, as he likes to dash and dive around the arena, trying to skewer you with his spear. Luckily, most of the physical attacks are easy to see coming, because any energy attacks that hit you will cause the room to go dark, making it almost impossible to see anything. He'll also sometimes shoot energy mines on the ground that explode after a moment, or just drop them next to you after you've gotten a combo in. He's already irritating, but he's also fought fairly early in the game, which means you'll only have some fairly weak armor. At least this Gnat's defense isn't that great either. Sigrun. We don't necessarily rank these types of lists, but let's face it, Sigrun could wipe the floor with all these fools without breaking a sweat, just as she did to us too many times to count. We may have seen most of her moveset by the time we got to her, considering she uses nearly every ability and move all the other Valkyries have. However, that just made it so a barrage of deadly attacks were constantly flying our way. On top of that, she has her own special moves, and she's much stronger than her underlings. She moves fast, and she hits hard, whether it be waves of projectiles, those infuriating grapples, or just some good old-fashioned health-depleting combos.
Don't take all day.
About time.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're facing down Ragnarok and taking on the 10 hardest bosses in God of War Ragnarok. For this list, we'll be looking at the bosses that pose the greatest challenge to the God of War as he and Atreus attempt to survive the end of the 9 realms. Beware, there will be spoilers ahead. What was the most difficult boss you faced in God of War Ragnarok? Vanadis. Although not the most challenging Valkyrie fight Kratos and Atreus have faced, Vanadis still provides enough of a challenge to give PTSD to anyone who saved the Valkyries from their curse in the previous game. While normally maintaining a safe distance would be a viable tactic during these fights, not so with Vanadis, as in addition to her devastating close quarters attacks, she can strike at Kratos and Atreus from afar with her bow. As the fight progresses, she can even coat the battlefield in poison, leeching health from Kratos and even Atreus if they're not careful. The revelation that Vanadis is Freya in her Valkyrie form adds an emotional weight to the preceding fight, witnessing her grief as she holds nothing back in her quest for revenge. Garm.
It's okay, boy. It's alright. Just calm. Calm. We just wanna...
There aren't many giant enemies to fight in Kratos' Norse adventures, but when there are, you can rest assured they are worth the wait. After mistakenly freeing Garm from his shackles in Hell, Kratos and Atreus must stop the giant wolf before he tears down all of the 9 realms. But Garm isn't going to go back to his chains willingly. His enormous size doesn't slow him down whatsoever, and his bite is definitely worse than his bark. Garm even manages to use his chains against the pair to keep them at bay, but this only ends up creating a window Kratos is quick to exploit. And just when you think you've put this bad boy down for good, Garm returns to finish the fight and even manages to put Kratos on the back foot. Luckily, there's a happy ending for this giant puppo.
Fen? Are you?
Alva. It wouldn't be a proper trip to Alfheim without one of the High Elves trying to prevent the father and son duo from leaving. After taking out the Dark Elf King in their previous adventure, now the Light Elf Queen stands in their way. Whereas the Elf King focused on brutality, Alva uses her speed to her advantage as she gracefully slides around the arena, slicing at Kratos with every pass and dishing out elemental attacks from afar. Alva also has the ability to heal herself at will, rendering all the damage done up to this point meaningless. The game's focus on defensive shield capabilities comes in very handy here if you've managed to get the hang of the timing, and if not, you're going to be in for an unending uphill battle, especially with absolutely no help from the Aesir God of War. Nidhogg.
Come on!
With Odin's curse on Freya bound in the roots of the World Tree, the Nidhogg was unfortunately only doing its job protecting the roots when it crossed paths with Kratos and Freya, but as it stood in their way, there was really no choice for either party. The Nidhogg is ferociously unrelenting, and Kratos must keep the beast's attention while Freya attempts to break the roots. Once Freya joins the fight, the Nidhogg unleashes all manner of attacks it was apparently holding back. From tail lasers and opening realm tears to attack from all sides, Kratos is more than grateful to have Freya fighting alongside him rather than against him. Eventually the pair wear the Nidhogg down enough that it attempts to escape, but as long as it lives, Freya will never be free, and sadly, the Nidhogg's sacrifice was necessary for that to happen.
I have to break his hold on me, and you are in the way! Lasso!
Hrist and Mist.
Valkyries!
Odin must have sent them!
Santa Monica Studios clearly heard how much gamers loved the challenge of the Valkyries, so they decided to give players double the fun. Hrist and Mist team up against Kratos and Atreus as they attempt to bring about Ragnarok, and are willing to do anything to stop that from happening. Despite the reflex memories gamers might still have from their previous bouts with the Valkyries, taking on two at once is a whole different kind of challenge. This isn't even mentioning the fact that once you think the fight is done, the pair heal themselves and come back stronger and faster than the last time. The duality of the Valkyries teaming up aligns perfectly with Kratos and Atreus' synchronization in battle as the pair team up to clip their wings and keep them grounded for good. Thor. Undoubtedly the most anticipated battle of the entire game after 2018's Stinger, the battle between Thor and Kratos does not disappoint. After an initial encounter to repay a blood debt, and even breaking the fourth wall with their fight, Thor vows this won't be their last encounter as he wants to fight the true God of War, and during the events of Ragnarok, Thor gets his wish. Thor continues to prove why he is so feared within the Nine Realms, easily taking many of Kratos' strongest attacks and simply brushing them off, constantly taunting the God of War throughout the entirety of the fight. Thor has a wide range of AoE attacks, and despite his enormous size, can easily cross the arena to deal devastating damage up close and personal. In the end, Thor got to battle the God Killer, but this is one fight that Kratos chose not to finish.
No more. For the sake of our children, we must be better.
Heimdall.
Oh. If it isn't Queen Mistletoe herself. Hilarious, by the way.
This fight was arguably more anticipated than round 2 of Kratos and Thor's fight. After having to put up with Heimdall's constant, arrogant mockery, we were more than ready to wipe that smug smile off Heimdall's face. After taking out his mount, Heimdall's ability to dodge every single attack is put to the test once Kratos puts the Draupnir spear to good use. However, even with this advantage, Heimdall constantly changes his attack patterns, keeping Kratos and the player on the defensive waiting for an opening. Even as Kratos attempts to spare Heimdall, the arrogant Aesir god refuses to stand down, regrowing his own arm to continue their battle and using his new arm to spray the battlefield with Bifrost attacks. Kratos finally shuts Heimdall up once and for all because it was necessary, not because it was written.
Brothers! Brothers! This isn't who you want to be!
Odin.
Looks like I gotta do everything around here.
Despite all of his plans and attempts to avoid Ragnarok, Odin ends up being the architect of his own destruction. With all the 9 realms united against him and all his dirty laundry laid bare, Odin drops any preconceptions and unleashes his wrath on Kratos and Atreus for bringing Ragnarok to his doorstep. Like many climactic battles in Ragnarok, the fight against Odin takes place in multiple stages, each with the Allfather utilizing a flurry of elemental attacks, forcing players to constantly dodge and choose their moments for attack or suffer massive damage. Kratos and Atreus must use all they've learned up to this point to counter Odin's endless attacks and verbal assaults, but it is by far one of the most satisfying moments to finally force the Allfather to bend the knee to the god of war and bring an end to his tyranny. The Berserker King. Just because the Valkyries are gone, doesn't mean there aren't still cursed challenges waiting within the 9 realms. Whereas the Valkyries posed a threat due in no small part to their incredible speed and agility, the Berserkers use a much more brutal approach, and none more so than the Berserker King. An absolute tank with a massive health bar, and will easily shrug off Kratos' strongest attacks while literally knocking Kratos off his feet. The King mostly has the same attack patterns as the previous Berserkers, but with substantially more power behind every strike. Even as Kratos stays on the move, the King can easily overwhelm him with his flurry of attacks, many of which are unblockable. The Berserker King might call for Kratos to kneel, but it's Kratos who ends up coming out ahead in the end. Gna.
Traitor!
Gna. She's fierce. Attack only if you think we are ready.
Challenging Sigrun not only for the position of Valkyrie Queen, but also the most difficult boss fight in all of the Norse realm, Gna even gives Kratos and Freya the option to walk away before the battle begins. Gna laughs as Kratos' most devastating attacks barely put a dent in her health bar. Her speed and ferocious attacks mean that should Kratos slip up even once, his health bar will greatly suffer the consequences. She can cross the arena in an instant, deliver hard-hitting ranged attacks, and use nearly every elemental attack seen thus far in the game. Despite Freya's pleas, Gna refuses to back down, and uses all of her power to prove to Kratos why she is Sigrun's rightful successor. Even in the face of defeat, Gna refuses to back down and leaves Freya no choice but to finish it.
I'm always blown away by how well these boss battles are designed. They're some of the most engaging and cinematic experiences in gaming, complemented by fantastic combat and characters. Alright, last up are our picks for the toughest enemies in God of War Ragnarok, as well as the hardest bosses from across the entire franchise.
Hey, try sticking your hand in there.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're scouring our bestiary to take on the 10 hardest new enemies in God of War Ragnarok. For this list, We'll be looking specifically at enemies you encounter numerous times during your journey, as many bosses deserve a list all their own. What was the hardest foe you faced in Ragnarok? Whites.
That doesn't look good.
As if the wisps weren't bad enough, now you have to deal with this paranormal abomination. Whites are created when 3 or more wisps join together, and the results are as frustrating as they sound. Whites wield strong magic attacks that can paralyze their opponent and leave them vulnerable as they teleport around the battlefield. Unlike wisps, however, whites can only be damaged by basic arrows, and even then, it will take multiple shots to bring them down to ground level to deal any real physical damage to them. Even when the white is defeated, you're still left with the wisp to deal with, but when compared to the white, they're easy prey. Wyverns.
Whoa, what is that? A wyvern! Nasty beast! Careful, lad!
The threat wyverns present isn't immediately obvious. Looking like overgrown chickens, these birds of prey fight best from afar, but aren't above swooping in for a quick grab that can cause substantial damage if not blocked or parried. They also wield numerous magical abilities that, while easily avoidable, can make for a chaotic skirmish in the midst of dealing with the rest of the foes usually in their company. The best way to deal with a wyvern is to have Atreus or Freya focus their fire on it, allowing Kratos to get up close and personal where the wyvern's attacks are limited. It's just actually getting in close that's the problem. Gredungers. Like many new enemies in God of War Ragnarok, Gredungers come in a variety of flavors, each with their own special abilities to lay Kratos flat on his back. The chimeras of the Norse realms, they attack like wild bulls, ramming and stomping at anything that gets in their way, and oftentimes have a shield that must be broken before any real damage can be dealt to them. Each requires different tactics and weaponry to deal with depending on whether they're susceptible to fire or ice damage, but then there's also the Dodr Gredunger, which is Odin's own special breed of the beast that uses unblockable Bifrost attacks. Attempting to parry and stun the Gredunger is the easiest way to take them down. You just have to be sure your timing is perfect or become the dirt beneath their hooves. Light Elf Slayers.
We don't want to hurt you.
We do not have a choice.
We thought we knew what to expect returning to Alfheim, having dealt with the Dark Elves on our last visit. Boy, were we wrong. It's honestly surprising the Light Elves were losing the war against the Dark Elves if this is how they fight. The Light Elf Slayers are undeniably the worst of the bunch. Wielding dual swords, they'll glide around the arena waiting for their moment to strike, and should Kratos become too aggressive, they can even block and counter many of his most powerful attacks. They can even heal themselves if they manage to slink away from the fight for long enough. Much like the way the Light Elf Slayers patiently wait for their moment to strike, so too must you do the same, as timing is everything when battling these fierce warriors of light. Einherjar Captains.
Careful, brother! You're covered in Bifrost!
There's nothing Odin won't do in order to stop your journey to Ragnarok, and that includes deploying his most powerful warriors to stand in your way. Leading the charge are the Einherjar Captains, and they're ready to prove how they achieve this rank. With their signature weapons, oftentimes a scythe or enormous hammer, they can easily cut through their opponents with ease using their powerful combos. Much like many of the other damage spongy enemies on this list, the key to knocking the captains down a rank is patience, waiting for the moment to strike. But beware, the captains are using the same strategy and just waiting for Kratos to let his guard down. Many of their attacks are blockable or can be parried, but your timing needs to be precise, otherwise they won't waste any time showing Kratos the error of his ways. Berserker mother.
They just keep coming. It's a bird trap, spawning a little wretched like there's no tomorrow.
For her, it will be so.
Just when you thought the wretches couldn't get any worse, they went and tattled on their mom about you, and she'd like a word. The Berserker's mother can not only spawn numerous wretches to annoyingly fight alongside her, her immense physical strength makes many of her attacks unblockable, and even attempting to fight from afar becomes unfavorable as she's also capable of spitting large globs of acid with surprising accuracy. No matter what way you approach this fight, don't expect any encounter with a Berserker mother to be a quick battle. Her strong defenses mean she's resistant to most physical attacks, and her ability to throw her own brood at you means she's willing to sacrifice her own bloodline just to ensure she doesn't go down easily. The Hateful.
Bloody Draugr holes! We've got to clear out all these undead bastards!
All of you who complained about how easy the Draugr were in 2018's God of War have a lot to answer for, because now we have to deal with the Hateful, and they're looking for payback. Unbelievably aggressive when compared to its more common counterpart, the Hateful also has a nasty habit of igniting itself, so any follow-up physical attack causes it to explode, giving this undead menace breathing room to get right back up in Kratos' personal space. Its dual axes come replete with numerous unblockable attacks, and coupled with its speed and ferocity, it's not really viable for Kratos to parry these attacks in the first place. Any battle against the Hateful, of which there are many, is a test of resilience and perseverance while choosing your moments and not becoming overconfident, because they are just waiting for you to slip up.
That Draugr.
Aye. We fought it at the other Draugr hole, didn't we? Odd.
Phantoms.
A phantom!
The Nords have a phantom! Of course the Nords have a phantom!
While the majority of encounters in God of War Ragnarok are fairly straightforward, learn the enemies' pattern and exploit their weaknesses, Phantoms up the challenge by adding environmental elements to their encounters. Just like the Wights and Wisps, direct attacks have no effect on Phantoms until their stun bar has been filled, and even then, they simply disappear to avoid any further attacks. Where the Phantoms differ, however, is with the runic spring pillars, which must be destroyed during the time when the Phantom is stunned. Only once all these pillars are destroyed can Kratos finally take the fight directly to the Phantom, but it won't take this offense lightly. Letting your companions lead the charge and using ranged attacks until the stun bar is filled are the only way to avoid its unblockable attacks should you get too close for comfort. Stalkers.
Oh no! Brother!
Stalkers are renowned for their hunting skills, and they have their sights set on hunting the most elusive game of all, the Greek god of war. These centaur beasts make full use of both their human and horse halves, attacking most often from a distance with a bow, and if up close and personal, will use their powerful legs to kick and stomp Kratos into submission. Occasionally, Stalkers' horns will glow, and if struck with a ranged attack, will leave them vulnerable for a few seconds, granting a small window of opportunity for counterattack, but just be sure to retreat before they get back up on their feet or they'll easily kick you across the arena. Once defeated, Kratos will make sure they get the point that he's the alpha predator in these realms. Dreki. Much like their real-world cousins, the Dreki's speed is not to be underestimated. These enormous crocodiles have no shortage of tricks up their sleeve and can easily gain the upper hand whether in close quarters or ranged combat. At a distance, they'll spit pools of acid which remain on the field, while at close range they'll swipe and bite, gnashing away at Kratos with their claws and tail swings. When the Dreki retreats, it's preparing a powerful lunge attack which, due to its surprising speed, is best avoided rather than deflected, lest you risk Kratos' health bar. And just when you think you have the Dreki on the ropes, It changes up its strategy and begins to electrify its acid attacks, which will completely immobilize Kratos if he's caught in it. An opportunity the Dreki will immediately rush in to take advantage of.
About time.
Welcome to MojoPlays, and today we're battling our way through both the Greek and Norse pantheons to challenge the 30 hardest bosses in the God of War series.
You do not want this fight.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I do.
Pollux and Castor, God of War Ascension.
Tolerate your impudence. You will not see her.
The pair of Pollux and Castor might be one of the worst boss fights in the series, but that doesn't mean it doesn't still pose a challenge. Full of time-bending powers and collapsing arenas, Pollux and Castor use their powers to great effect and have a myriad of cheap tactics and tricks to slow Kratos' progress. Dual-wielding weapons and teleporting around the arena, the first phase of the fight can be a bit challenging due to the constantly shifting tactics as well as the magic and time powers. But it's when Pollux takes over that the fight truly intensifies. Pollux uses his telekinetic abilities to unleash all manner of magical attacks against Kratos, while also throwing Castor's weapons from afar, keeping his distance from the action, making it more difficult for Kratos to land a hit. Pollux will also regularly break down and rebuild the arena, forcing Kratos to remain constantly on the move. Callisto, God of War, Ghost of Sparta.
Who is my father?
Nothing in Kratos' life in Greece ever gives him a moment of peace, and upon reuniting with his mother and finding out that his brother is still alive, Callisto is forcibly transformed, presumably either by Zeus or some kind of curse, just as she is about to reveal to Kratos who his father is. Transformed into a hideous abomination, Kratos must battle his own mother before she kills him first. Callisto's enormous size is her greatest weapon, and she uses the small enclosed arena to her advantage, slamming her enormous fist to the ground and swinging wildly at Kratos as he attempts to mount any kind of counterattack. Callisto can also cross the room with surprising speed and easily catch Kratos, throwing him against the few remaining obstructions. Thankfully, this fight is mostly physical, so the best strategy is maintaining as much distance as possible while always being aware of what attack is coming next.
Finally, I am free.
Aegeon the Hecatoncheires, God of War Ascension. Infected by Megaera's parasites, Aegeon is horrifically transformed and forced to do battle with Kratos. What begins as only the Hecatoncheires' hand doing battle with Kratos, growing bladed fingers and teeth, the battle quickly grows uncontrollable as the arena constantly shifts with every attack, sending Kratos to all corners of the complex with the mutilated hand swiping and slicing at him every step of the way. Filled with quick-time events and close calls, and given the scale and scope of the battle, it's all too easy to lose Kratos in all the chaos and wide angles. With victory in sight, Megaera infects the entirety of Aegeon and sends the entire Colosseum into disarray. Filled with undead warriors, gnashing teeth, and threats from all sides, the opening of Ascension leaves more of an impact than the rest of the game entirely. Garm, God of War Ragnarok. Ragnarok's boss fights might be on a significantly smaller scale than what the series is known for, but when it does drop a big one, it's a big one. After accidentally freeing Garm, Kratos and Atreus attempt to right the boy's mistake, only to nearly become lunch for the enormous wolfhound. Garm's enormous size compared to the two means a good chunk of the fight is nothing more than Kratos swiping at the pooch's ankles. But he will occasionally give the pair an up-close look at his chompers to give Kratos something new to swing at. Full of scratches, swipes, and bites, given Garm's size as well as his speed, there's very little Kratos can do except dodge and wait for the perfect moment to retaliate. When Garm reappears for round 2, the arena is even smaller, giving Kratos and Atreus less room to maneuver, but at least the same is true for Garm. Grendel of the Ashes and Frost, God of War 2018.
Did you see it?
Yes!
Are you certain?
I got it! Trust me!
Good then. Aim for the face.
Leave it to the trolls to ruin what was a beautiful father and son bonding moment. By this point in the game, Kratos and Atreus have faced down their fair share of trolls, but the Grendels are a different breed of troll entirely. The pair are significantly faster than their free-range cousins, and have access to numerous magic attacks and spells that the other trolls don't, such as room-filling fog. Their enormous pillars can do a substantial amount of damage, whether they're slamming them down with an aftershock, or simply swinging them in Kratos' direction. Focusing on only one is nearly impossible as they constantly have each other's backs, and each is only susceptible to either the Leviathan Axe or the Blades of Chaos, forcing players to constantly switch weapons to deal with whichever troll happens to be the closest. Definitely keep an eye on your health bar throughout this one.
Phew. He was big, but no match for us gods.
I have beaten bigger.
Thanatos, God of War, Ghost of Sparta.
The marked warrior shall bring about the destruction of Olympus. Ares chose poorly that day.
The God of Death, Thanatos, is looking to make Kratos' stay in the Dominion of Death a permanent one. Even with Kratos' lost brother Deimos fighting at his side, Thanatos still poses a substantial threat even for the newly christened God of War. Thanatos is crazy fast, and can quickly zip around the arena while also taking to the air to unleash magic attacks before slamming down and disorienting Kratos momentarily. Thanatos eventually unleashes his wild side and overtakes the battlefield as an enormous winged dragon beast complete with all new and stronger attacks. Unfortunately, the cost of victory over the God of Death is Kratos losing Deimos again, allowing Kratos to unleash the true power of his Spartan rage all over Thanatos and delivering swift justice for his fallen brother's sacrifice. Odin, God of War Ragnarok.
Looks like I gotta do everything around here.
Throughout God of War Ragnarok, Odin is presented as a very ominous and imposing, but ultimately timid antagonist. However, the veil is lifted during the climax of Ragnarok when Odin drops the facade and unleashes his true godly strength. Odin is remarkably nimble, and will quickly dart around the arena while unleashing all manner of elemental attacks. The first phase of the fight is fairly straightforward, and it isn't until round 2 you realize Odin was holding back. With room-clearing magic attacks and his now transforming staff, Odin can easily catch the player off guard and keep them on the back foot. Even attempting to play cautiously is dangerous, as Odin will more than happily bring the fight directly to Kratos. Even with the aid of Freya alongside Atreus, Odin more than proves why he is so feared throughout the realms. The Furies, God of War Ascension.
Then let death be your reality!
Although Kratos encounters the Furies numerous times throughout the events of Ascension, it's during the final climax in which the Furies unleash their true powers on the future God of War. Realizing their mind games will no longer work on the Spartan, the two remaining Fury sisters join forces to simply kill Kratos for good. As Alecto transforms into an enormous tentacled kraken creature, Tisiphone brings the fight to Kratos' level, and in between battling her sister's mini appendages, summons numerous Spartan warriors to battle Kratos on the high seas in a true naval nightmare filled with magic and elemental attacks. The game thankfully lets you mostly focus on one sister at a time, but the flurry of QuickTime events can set you back if you're not prepared for them. Facing your demons has never felt so satisfying.
My death will not free you from this madness!
Hrist and Mist, God of War Ragnarok.
Valkyries! Odin must have sent them!
The Valkyries offered some of the most significant challenges in God of War 2018, and the introduction of Hrist and Mist was more than enough to instantly give players sweaty palms. Thankfully, Atreus is a much more capable fighter this time around, although he will still need the occasional rescue, but dealing with the constant assault from two Valkyries at once is enough to put even the strongest God of War on the back foot. Even attempting to deal with them one at a time is futile, as the other will frequently interrupt and lend a hand to their sister. And just when you think you finally have the battle in hand, the pair will call for divine intervention from Asgard and regain their entire health bars unless you manage to stop them. Match their aggression with aggression and never let up until victorious, and block like your life depends on it, because it does. Tyr, God of War Ragnarok.
The good Spartan returns.
Throughout God of War 2018, players are constantly shown and told legends of Tyr's travels. And in Ragnarok, fans got first-hand experience how powerful a God of War Tyr truly is during their trip to Valhalla. Having invited Kratos, Tyr uses combat to help Kratos overcome his many problems. But this form of therapy isn't going to be gentle. Each time the player defeats and re-encounters Tyr, the former God of War has a new set of weapons from his travels, and he seems to have spent an awful lot of time training with each of them. Tyr's assaults are relentless, and he can and will easily get the upper hand on Kratos even as he regains his strength. Each encounter with Tyr brings not only a new set of weapons for players to contend with, but also new tricks and tactics that Tyr will frequently use to gain the upper hand.
Stop, Kratos. I yield.
Hercules, God of War 3.
Call it my 13th and final labor. Soon I will become the God of War and claim the throne for myself.
Although they could have easily been allies, Hercules takes Kratos' very existence as an affront, and seeks to kill Kratos as his final labor before ascending to Mount Olympus. Content to watch his minions attempt to wear Kratos down before officially joining the fray, Hercules launches into the arena with his Nemean cestus armor and commands his sentries to hold Kratos down so he can get a cheap hit in on the God of War. Hercules is incredibly powerful and has large sweeping strikes that can clear the immediate area around him. With the help of the thorn statues around the arena, Kratos can chip away at Hercules' armor until Kratos eventually turns his own weapons against his half-brother. Hercules believed himself a god, but was left to rot in the gutter. Hades, God of War 3.
I will see you suffer as I have suffered. Your soul is mine.
After Kratos' numerous escapes from the underworld, it's safe to say that Hades' beef with Kratos is pretty personal for making him look bad. After attempting to steal Kratos' soul proves ineffective, Hades takes matters into his own hands and gives Kratos a taste of his own medicine with the claws of Hades swinging and slamming around the tiny arena. Hades is much larger than most of the other gods, so while Kratos could hack away at his ankles, he does much more damage aiming higher. After giving Hades a monster headache and sending him into the river Styx, the fight is far from over, and Hades returns with all new swipe and slam attacks Kratos needs to dodge to ensure Hades remains buried among his dead worshippers for good. Persephone, God of War, Chains of Olympus.
Witness the end.
The reluctant queen of the underworld, Persephone orchestrates a scheme that not only reunites Kratos with his daughter and forces him to make an impossible choice, but could also potentially end the world altogether. Clad in armor, Persephone shakes Greece to its very bedrock battling Kratos, sending chunks of the arena at him with every turn. She will eventually call in the big guns, and with a few simple button presses, Kratos leaves Atlas trapped with the weight of the world on his shoulders. Seeing her plans slowly dissolving, Persephone unleashes her wrath, and were it not for Kratos' parrying abilities, would have easily vaporized the future god of war. With the gauntlet of Zeus, Kratos delivers a gut punch that puts an end to all of Persephone's schemes.
Your suffering will never end, Ghost of Sparta.
Nidhogg, God of War Ragnarok. The guardian of the world tree, the Nidhogg stands between Freya and her freedom from Odin's curse, and is unfortunately a casualty of the Allfather's malice. With its realm tear-hopping abilities, as well as powerful Bifrost attacks, the Nidhogg easily dominates the small arena before Freya joins the fight. The Nidhogg slithers around, clinging to the many pillars dotting the area, while unleashing powerful Bifrost blasts that can easily double the damage Kratos endures. Occasionally, she'll inhale debris through her chest cavity to use as munitions against the two who would dare disturb the roots of Yggdrasil. Finally realizing the battle is lost, she attempts to retreat, only to lose her head for interfering.
You are in the way! Blast the ripple!
Scorpius, God of War 3. One of the few bosses in God of War 3 that wasn't one of the many gods waiting to be slain by Kratos' hand, the Scorpius' brood attempts to slow Kratos' progress before the mother of all scorpions makes her grand entrance and tries to swallow Kratos whole. With all of her vulnerable parts shielded in ice, Kratos must break through her hardened exterior before dealing any real damage to the queen. Once weakened, her children will try to stop Kratos' impromptu dental surgery, which only enrages the queen further, and rightfully so, as she slams her claws around the arena to crush Kratos like the annoying pest he is. The queen will routinely retreat, only to re-emerge to swipe at Kratos from afar while he deals with her brood. The battle finally ends when Kratos gives her a dose of her own medicine and ensures she gets the point. Magni and Modi.
Surrender. The Allfather demands it. No. Good.
Although the sons of Thor were tasked with hunting Kratos and Atreus, they really should have known when to back down. As the quartet square off, Magni focuses most of his attacks on Kratos, while Modi fends off Atreus and his bow, while the pair occasionally team up to bring down the former god of war. Their fighting style is quite similar to Kratos's, employing their shields and melee attacks, making this battle more evenly matched than most. When the tide turns against them, the sons will blind Kratos and Atreus to attack from the shadows. Fending off the pair is no easy task, especially since both will also demonstrate their godly abilities with arena-filling magic attacks that can leave Kratos stun-locked and open to attack. Although not the first time Kratos has faced multiple bosses at once, the brothers' coordination makes them especially challenging.
How did you... You have no idea. You son of a bitch!
Ulrich, God of War 2.
Delivering the very object of my vengeance, Kratos.
The warrior who nearly defeated Kratos and led to his blood oath with Ares, Ulrich the Barbarian King returns from the depths of Hades to exact his revenge against Kratos on his pilgrimage to find the Sisters of Fate. Dragging Kratos into battle once again, from the back of his mighty steed, King Ulrich speaks loudly and carries an even bigger hammer. Once dismounted, Ulrich becomes even more dangerous with large sweeping attacks that summon the undead to fight alongside him.
No! Not you again!
These aren't just fodder enemies either. They can grab Kratos and allow Ulrich to get a couple cheap hits in before Kratos breaks free. Finally, as Ulrich's rage grows, so does he, until Kratos is dwarfed by the might of the barbarian king. Ulrich might have returned looking for vengeance, but Kratos grounded him and brought him back down to size. The Crimson Dread, God of War Ragnarok.
Got him cornered!
Although only a few dragons remained in Midgard in God of War 2018, their population has seen a boom in the years leading up to Ragnarok, and arguably the dragons' champion has to be the Crimson Dread. While exploring the crater, Kratos will encounter the winged beast, and the Dread makes quick work of living up to its name. Far quicker than most enemies in the game, as well as maintaining an aerial advantage, the Crimson Dread will not only coat the battlefield in flames as it swoops in from above, but will also take a bite out of Kratos' health bar should he get careless. The lower the Dread's health becomes, the stronger and more aggressive its attack patterns, with a few being completely unblockable. Baldur, God of War 2018.
I thought you'd be bigger. But you're definitely the one.
After the troll fight in the early hours of the game, players may believe they have a pretty good handle on the God of War's new combat. And then Baldur comes knocking to prove them wrong. After their initial bout, Kratos and Atreus cross paths with Baldur multiple times before their final climactic battle, and both combatants hold nothing back despite Freya's interference. Even without his invulnerability, Baldur is no pushover, and Kratos must switch between the blades and the axe to match Baldur's shifting elemental properties, while the ever-changing landscape of the battle keeps players constantly on edge. Atreus is especially useful here to aggro Baldur and opens him up to Kratos' most powerful attacks, and is a brilliant display of their synergy during battle as they expertly chain attacks together to end the cycle once and for all.
You could have walked away!
The cycle ends here. Must be better.
Heimdall, God of War Ragnarok.
See you soon.
Well, we both know that's not true. But don't worry, Frigg. I'll be coming for you and your brother as soon as I am finished here.
A battle with such unpredictable odds, Kratos needed to craft a weapon specifically for their encounter. While much of the early fight is spent on the defensive trying to avoid his attacks, and sass, once Kratos lands that all-important first hit, the true battle begins. The battle against Heimdall is just as much about predicting his moves as it is about dealing damage, as Heimdall's erratic movements and speed make keeping up with him a risky endeavor, while laying traps of your own with the Draupnir Spear opens the all-seeing god up to counterattacks. Heimdall has numerous unblockable attacks as well as a realm shift ability to slow down time. Beating him once is literally only half the battle, as Heimdall will unleash powerful Bifrost attacks before Kratos puts his lights out for good. Bet he didn't see that coming.
Brother! Brother!
Sisters of Fate, God of War 2.
There is no power greater than the Sisters of Fate. If you challenge us, you will die.
The Sisters of Fate were never going to let Kratos change what was already written, but that didn't stop the rage-fueled Spartan from attempting to rewrite history. What begins as a one-on-one battle with Lachesis, Kratos needs to not only maintain his distance while parrying her many attacks, but keep to the grapple points to avoid her airborne and lightning follow-ups. Atropos will then attempt to erase Kratos from his own timeline by destroying the sword bridge Kratos used to defeat Ares. While Atropos isn't as powerful as her sister, her constant teleporting makes keeping up with her a nuisance. Once the sisters have teamed up, Lachesis will assault Kratos head-on while Atropos will swipe at Kratos from the many mirrors surrounding the room. Turning the Fates against the sisters with the Amulet of Fates will force the sisters to take a good long look at their own reflections. The Maven, God of War Ragnarok.
Ah, it appears the librarian would like a word.
Ragnarok is full of optional bosses that can pose a significant challenge, but few can hold a candle to stumbling into the path of the librarian of the Elven Sanctum. After dealing with numerous other light elves, including the light elf queen Alva, many would believe they know what to expect. They were thoroughly mistaken. The Maven is relentless in her attacks, which is even more devastating given the tiny arena. But with many of her sword strikes being completely unblockable, as well as her ability to chain multiple combos together, Kratos will barely have a moment to pick up a health stone before her next assault. Even if you manage to chip away at her health, she'll retreat to heal herself, and if you don't interrupt her in time, all of your work will be undone, and you'll be starting over from square one.
We are taking the book.
Dark Elf King, God of War 2018. More or less an overpowered Dark Elf, not unlike those Kratos and Atreus had already battled numerous times before, the Dark Elf King is far faster, stronger, and implements much stronger magic attacks than his brethren. The Dark Elf King manages to go toe-to-toe with the former God of War, but should he become overwhelmed, will use magic to blind Kratos and Atreus to give him an advantage as he blasts long-range attacks from the darkness. His swings and aerial assaults can also be quite devastating should he connect, but even his majesty is no match for Kratos' Spartan rage.
No, that can't be.
What did it say?
That we made a grave mistake.
Thor, God of War Ragnarok.
You're not from here. We got a tradition called blood payments. It means I get a piece of you for what you took from my family. You'll pick it up.
While this fight didn't start with the bang many were expecting given the teaser at the end of God of War 2018, it nonetheless shattered our expectations as well as the fourth wall. Thor is every bit Kratos' equal in terms of strength and surprisingly speed, but that doesn't mean Kratos won't have to fight to survive. After the initial encounter, the two have their final bout in the shadow of Ragnarok, and Thor brings the thunder. Thor is able to give as well as he gets, and his defenses make him a damage sponge to most of Kratos' attacks beside the Draupnir spear, which can eat away a significant chunk if given time to charge up. Making smart use of Kratos' shield attacks to interrupt many of Thor's most powerful swings will easily turn the tide of the battle as long as Kratos can avoid Thor's multiple lightning strikes.
Come on!
Charon, God of War, Chains of Olympus.
Be gone. It is not yet your time, mortal.
The ferryman responsible for bringing the souls of the dead to the afterlife, Charon doesn't take kindly to Kratos making a mockery of his profession by showing up still alive, and almost immediately sets about righting this oversight. While the first encounter is unwinnable, Kratos returns to settle the score at a later time. Charon is exceptionally fast, and along with his long-reaching scythe attacks and ability to teleport around his ship, landing a combo is only the beginning of Kratos' problems. Charon will also make use of the ship's pillars to regain his health until Kratos destroys them, and can also spew a poisonous gas that will eat away at Kratos' health if he doesn't avoid it. This isn't even mentioning the possibility of him using his one-hit kill that he pulls out of nowhere. The ferryman puts up a valiant fight, but Kratos sent him swimming downriver.
Having defeated Charon, Kratos journeyed deeper into Hades and closer to his goal.
Zeus, God of War 3.
Such chaos. I will have much to do after I kill you. Face me, father. It is time to end this.
The king of the gods of Greece, and arguably one of the worst fathers of all time, much like Ares, Zeus earns his place on Kratos' hit list by betraying him. Zeus is one of the most powerful gods for a reason, and he makes sure Kratos feels the thunder as their battle moves from a 2D fighter to overlooking the end of ancient Greece, and finally, inside Mother Gaia herself. Zeus employs all manner of magic attacks, especially his lightning, as well as tricks, such as projecting multiple images of himself for Kratos to spam against. The finale to this grand confrontation is exceptionally cathartic as players live out their vengeance through Kratos' eyes and fulfill their promise to bring about the destruction of Olympus. Ares, God of War.
I am not the same man you found that day. The monster you've created has returned to kill you.
The original God of War was never going to give up his title willingly, but in a game where the player has become accustomed to Kratos being mostly OP in many situations, the final showdown with Ares was quite the wake-up call. Ares' powerful arena-filling attacks keep Kratos constantly on the move and fighting to maintain his distance with the Blades of Chaos. And just when you think the fight is over, Ares will send Kratos into his own mind to battle his demons and save his family before returning to the real world to bring his vengeance to Ares full circle. The newly acquired sword bridge doesn't have any of the magic abilities of the blades, making this final length of the fight more about defense than offense. But few things are as satisfying as bringing down the God of War by your own hands.
I was trying to make you a great warrior. You succeeded.
Sigrun, God of War 2018. You'd think fighting your way through 8 Valkyries in an attempt to save their souls was enough to earn you some mercy with their queen, but you'd be greatly mistaken. Sigrun begins the battle with a surprise attack, and things really only go downhill from there. Utilizing all the best attacks of her sisters, but giving them a boost in power, Sigrun rains hell down upon Kratos and Atreus, and is absolutely relentless in her assault. The throne room you fight in is one of the smallest Valkyrie arenas in the game, and leaves very little room to retreat and regroup, as Sigrun will mercilessly hunt Kratos to every corner. She might be grateful at the end of the fight, but she will definitely make you work for it.
Thank you, friends. You have saved the Valkyries.
Berserker King, God of War Ragnarok. Those who managed to complete the challenge of the Valkyries in God of War 2018 had no idea what else was waiting for them on the eve of Ragnarok. Kratos and his companions will have to fight their way through a gauntlet of 12 berserkers in order to reach King Hrolf, and he does everything in his power to make Kratos regret making it this far. The Berserker King has numerous range attacks based on the previous berserkers Kratos faced to keep him at bay, as well as incredibly powerful frost and bifrost attacks, and once his health is whittled down to half, he'll hide his health bar until Kratos attacks with the opposite element. Make sure to bring a resurrection stone for this one. You're going to need it. Gna, God of War Ragnarok.
Traitor! Gna. She's fierce. Attack only if you think we are ready.
If you thought the challenge of the Valkyries ended with Sigrun, then Gna would like a word with you. After the conclusion of God of War Ragnarok, Kratos and Freya will encounter Gna in Muspelheim, and the newly crowned Queen of the Valkyries is not at all happy about her position becoming null and void after the fall of Asgard. Gna is every bit as fierce as Sigrun, but somehow even more aggressive. She has some of the strongest defenses of any enemy within the game, and won't hesitate to cover the arena in deadly Bifrost, in addition to using her razor-bladed wings and leaping ground pound attacks. As her health gets lower, her attacks become even more unpredictable, and if the player hasn't mastered the counter and parry system, Kratos will go down for the count faster than Freya can revive him. Ever the proud warrior, Gna was never going to admit defeat.
You have to let it go. Finish it.
There's nothing quite like unleashing your Spartan rage on the pantheon of Greek and Norse gods. God of War has given gamers so many top-tier bosses and enemies over the years, and we truly cannot wait to see what Santa Monica Studio does next with Kratos' journey. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.